There was a man in southern Italy who bled from his hands for 50 years, not once, not twice. Every single day, for 5 decades, blood ran from wounds that never healed, never got infected, and never fully explained themselves to modern medicine. Doctors examined him, skeptics mocked him, the Vatican itself investigated him, twice. And through it all, he knelt in a small friary in San Giovanni Rotondo and did one thing, over and over, with a wooden crucifix pressed to his lips. His name was Padre Pio, and what he understood about that simple act, the kiss, the crucifix, the surrender in that gesture, is something almost nobody talks about anymore. Not because it's hidden, because we've forgotten how to sit still long enough to hear it. So I want you to pause right now, not later. Now. If you have a crucifix nearby, on a wall, on a rosary, on a chain around your neck, I want you to hold it while you watch this. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't folklore. It's the testimony of a man who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body, who wrestled with the devil in the dark of his cell, and who told his spiritual children something so simple it's almost easy to miss. He said the crucifix is not decoration, it is a doorway. Let's talk about what's really on the other side of it. Padre Pio was born Francesco Forgione in 1887 in the small town of Pietrelcina, Italy. From the time he was a small boy, something was different about him. He spoke of seeing Jesus and Mary. He spoke of seeing the devil too, not as a metaphor, not as a feeling, but as a presence that came to torment him at night, sometimes in the shape of animals, sometimes as other friars, sometimes beating him so severely that his brothers would find him in the morning bruised and exhausted from a fight no one else had witnessed. Think about that for a second. A war being fought in a locked room, and only one side leaves visible bruises. He became a Capuchin friar, and in 1918, while praying before a crucifix in the choir loft of his church, something happened that would define the rest of his life. He felt a piercing pain in his hands, his feet, his side. When he looked down, he was bleeding. The wounds of Christ's crucifixion had appeared on his own body. The stigmata. He carried those wounds for 50 years. 50 years of daily bleeding, daily pain, daily humiliation, because people came from everywhere just to stare at his hands. He wore fingerless gloves to try to hide them, not because he wanted glory, but because he didn't. He once said he wished God would take the visible wounds and leave him only the invisible suffering, because attention was the one cross he found hardest to carry. Here's the part that stops me every time I think about it. Padre Pio didn't get the stigmata while performing some grand public miracle. He got it while praying quietly before a crucifix, alone, in the stillness. That's the pattern of his entire life. The extraordinary breaking through in the middle of the ordinary, simple act of looking at Christ on the cross and refusing to look away. That's what he meant when he told people, kiss the crucifix like you mean it. Don't just touch it. Don't just glance at it. Press your lips to it the way you'd press your lips to the hand of someone who just saved your life. Because that, he said, is exactly what happened. So what actually happens, according to Padre Pio, when you kiss a crucifix with real intention? Let's walk through it. All 9. And stay with me for number 7, because it's the one that changed how I personally pray. Number 1, you interrupt the silence of heaven with your own voice. Padre Pio believed that so much of our spiritual life is passive. We wait for God to speak to us, wait for a sign, wait for a feeling. But the kiss is active. It's you initiating. He told his spiritual children that God responds to boldness born of love, not passivity born of fear. When you kiss the crucifix, you're not asking permission to love God, you're doing it. And he said heaven notices the difference between a heart that waits and a heart that reaches. Number 2, you remind your own body that it belongs to something greater than itself. This is a man who lived in his body as a battlefield, bleeding hands, exhausted from spiritual combat, aching from illness for most of his life. He understood, more than almost anyone, that faith isn't just a mental exercise. It's physical, the kneeling, the kissing, the sign of the cross. He insisted that these gestures matter because we are not just souls floating through life. We are bodies too, and God became a body to save bodies. When your lips touch that cross, your body is professing what your mind sometimes struggles to believe. Number 3, you confront the same enemy Padre Pio confronted every night. Remember the beatings, the attacks, the demonic torment he endured for decades? He said the crucifix was his weapon against it. Not a symbol of comfort only, but a literal instrument of spiritual warfare. He told his fellow friars that the devil cannot stand the sight of the cross because it is the monument of his own defeat. Every time you kiss it, you are picking up the same weapon Padre Pio used to survive nights that would have broken most people. Number 4, you practice dying before you actually have to. That sounds heavy, I know, but stay with me. Padre Pio talked often about the good death, not morbidly, but as a preparation. He believed that every small act of surrender, every moment you humble yourself before the cross, is training for the final surrender we all eventually face. He wasn't afraid of death. He said it plainly, those who live close to the crucifix have already rehearsed how to let go. The kiss is a small practice run for the biggest moment of your life. Number 5, you receive strength you didn't have 30 seconds earlier. This is not poetic language. Padre Pio described prayer, especially before the crucifix, as a transfusion. Think of prayer as a lifeline thrown down into a pit. You don't have to explain how it works to grab onto it and pull yourself up. He told a spiritual daughter who was overwhelmed with anxiety to run, not walk, run, to the crucifix whenever she felt weak, because the strength wasn't going to come from inside her that day. It was going to come from outside her, through that image, into her. Number 6, you join a chain of suffering that stretches back 2,000 years. Padre Pio never asked his followers to suffer alone. He told them that every hardship, kissed and offered at the foot of the cross, becomes united with Christ's own suffering and stops being wasted pain. It becomes meaningful. He called this co-redemptive suffering, a heavy theological word for something very human. Your pain matters, your struggle matters, and it doesn't have to be pointless if you hand it over instead of carrying it alone. Number 7, and this is the one almost nobody talks about. Padre Pio said that the kiss given to the crucifix in a moment of doubt is worth more in heaven than the kiss given in a moment of comfort. Read that again. We tend to think our faith is strongest when we feel close to God, when prayer feels warm, when church feels alive, when everything lines up. But Padre Pio flipped that completely. He told his spiritual children that the driest, darkest, most doubt-filled moment, when you don't feel anything, when heaven feels silent, when you kiss that crucifix and feel absolutely nothing in return, that is the moment of the greatest spiritual value. Because in that moment you're not doing it for the feeling. You're doing it purely out of love and will. No reward, no comfort. Just faith, standing on its own 2 feet in the dark. He himself lived this. For years, decades really, Padre Pio experienced what mystics call a dark night. Periods where he felt abandoned, where prayer felt like shouting into an empty room, where even he, a man bearing the wounds of Christ, wondered if God had forgotten him. And still he knelt. Still he kissed the cross. Still he offered Mass every single day, sometimes taking hours because he was so overwhelmed with what he called reliving Calvary. If you've ever prayed and felt nothing back, if you've ever wondered whether anyone's even listening, I need you to hear this. That silence is not proof of absence. According to a man who bled for God for 50 years, that silence might be the exact place where the most valuable prayer of your life is happening. If you feel that in your chest right now, I want you to let me know in the comments. I mean it. Tell me about the moment your faith felt driest, because I promise you're not the only one watching this who needed to hear number 7 today. Number 8. You remember that love, real love, always costs something. Padre Pio was blunt about this. He said too many people want a Christianity without a cross, comfort without cost, resurrection without crucifixion. But he said the crucifix teaches the opposite lesson. Love that doesn't cost you anything probably isn't love at all. When you kiss it, you're agreeing, in that instant, to a love that includes sacrifice. Not because pain is good in itself, but because love that refuses all sacrifice is really just self-interest, wearing a nicer name. Number 9. You plant a seed that grows even when you can't see it. Padre Pio loved the image of the mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, Christ said, and yet it grows into a tree big enough for birds to nest in its branches. He told people not to measure their prayer life by how they felt in the moment, but by the seeds they were quietly planting. A kiss on a crucifix might feel like nothing. 30 seconds. No lightning, no vision, nothing dramatic. But he insisted that nothing offered to God in sincerity is ever wasted. It goes into the ground. And one day, maybe years later, maybe in a moment of crisis, you can't yet imagine it grows into exactly the strength you need. So that's all 9, but knowing them isn't the point. Padre Pio was never interested in people who just knew things. He wanted people who did things. So here's what he'd actually want you to do today. Not someday, today. First, go to confession. I know, nobody wants to hear that one, but Padre Pio spent hours, sometimes 10, 12, 14 hours a day, hearing confessions because he believed it was the single most underused lifeline in the Christian life. People would travel from all over the world and wait days for a slot with him, and he'd sit in that confessional box until his body gave out, because he said souls were worth more than his own exhaustion. He once told a penitent that the confessional is a second baptism, that whatever you're carrying, whatever shame you think is too heavy or too embarrassing, it's not too heavy for that room. If it's been months, years since your last confession, let this be the nudge. Go this week. Second, pray the rosary, but pray it like Padre Pio prayed it, which means slow down. He called the rosary his weapon, and he prayed it constantly, sometimes multiple times a day, worn beads sliding through fingers that were bleeding as he held them. But he warned against rushing through it, like a chore. He said to actually picture each mystery, really see Mary at the foot of the cross, really see the empty tomb, because the rosary isn't a magic formula, it's a meditation. Even 5 decades prayed slowly, with attention, will do more for your soul than the whole thing rushed through on autopilot. Third, and this is the simplest one, kiss the crucifix on purpose today, not as a passing habit. Stop, hold it, mean it. Say something honest to God while you do it, even if that honest thing is, I don't feel anything right now and I'm doing this anyway. Especially if that's the honest thing. Remember number 7. I want you to think about something for a second before we close this out. Padre Pio bled for 50 years and never once used it to build himself a following. He hid his hands, he avoided crowds when he could. He wanted people looking at the cross, not at him. And yet here we are, more than 50 years after his death, still talking about him, still asking what he knew that we don't. Maybe the answer really was this simple all along. Maybe the doorway was never hidden. Maybe it was just sitting there this whole time, on a wall, on a chain, in a drawer somewhere, waiting for someone to actually stop and press their lips to it and mean it. If any part of this reached you today, if you felt something while I was talking about number 7, or if you've got your own crucifix in your hand right now, do me a favor and comment below. Tell me which number hit you the hardest. And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, hit like, subscribe, and stay close, because we're going to keep walking through the life of this remarkable man together. Until then, I'll leave you with the words Padre Pio said more than almost anything else. To nearly everyone who came to him, afraid, exhausted, or lost. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Go in peace.